You never know, right? All
No,
right.
you're recording. You're good.
I am. Yes. All right. So the first question I was asked is, why is it important to prioritize gut health? And I'm going to turn back my clock a couple thousand years. I'm going to go to Hippocrates. And here's what he said: all disease starts in the gut. Now, he was right about a lot of things, but he wasn't right about that. All disease does not start in the gut. But, a couple thousand years ago, they knew that it was really, really, really important. When you start looking at the stats, 1 in 4 people have a consistent lower gastrointestinal problem, whether it's diarrhea, constipation, hemorrhoids, diverticulitis, whatever. That's 1 in 4 people. And 1 in 5 people have an upper gut problem. So that might be acid reflux, indigestion, bloating, things like that. But there's a whole bunch of things going on there. And very, very simply, if you don't have a healthy gut, it's going to be really hard to have a healthy body. So, remember, it's been said, you are what you eat. Yeah, that's kind of true. You are what you absorb. That's more true. And without a good gut, you may not absorb the things you want, and you may actually absorb things you don't want if you have a leaky gut. And then most true is you are what you don't eliminate. Now, that would be lower bowel, right? But that's also liver and kidneys and sweat and lymphatic system and things like that. So gut health, supremely important. The next question I had is, what are some of the signs and symptoms that your gut may not be working as well as you want it to? And I'm going to give you a really strange answer to that. Almost any sign or symptom. So as I'm standing here, I am not aware of my lungs. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I know I have them. I know that I'm working. I know I'm getting oxygen. But, unless I really stress them, if I go for a sprint or, whatever way I'm gonna really, really need more oxygen, I'm not aware of my lungs. Or unless, for instance, I'm without air. And by the way, when I swim, and sometimes I'm without air by design, but I'll tell you what, I'm very acutely aware at that moment in time. Another example, my heart. I'm not aware at this moment that my heart is beating. I don't feel it. I'm not aware of it. I can take my pulse and figure that out. And I know it is beating. Our gut should be like that. You really shouldn't be aware of it, except for maybe when you're hungry or maybe when you need to use the restroom. That's it. All day long, your gut ought to be there and you ought to not be aware of it. And that doesn't happen with enough people. There's so many people that have so much distress. That's why they sell a ton of Tums and acid blockers and bowel agents and, you name it, lots of stuff there. The next question I received is, what's the role of the bacteria in our gut? And here's what I'm going to tell you. Life critical, absolutely life critical. These are our friends. They're great for our body. They're great for our immune system. It's not us against them. It's us with them. And there's a book entitled 10% Human. And that book is really about all of our DNA. So we have 10x the bugs in our gut that we have cells in our body, many, many hundreds of trillions of bugs. And here's what I'll tell people. All living organisms eat, drink, and go to the bathroom. So we have a balance of good bugs and bad bugs, or not so good bugs. The difference between good and bad is what they eat and what they poop. So good bugs eat poop and poop nutrients. Bad bugs eat nutrients and poop toxins. But keep in mind, a bug that's good under certain circumstances may be bad under other circumstances. So one of the articles that I would have shared is a role of the microbiome throughout the entire human life cycle. And what they know is that in infants, and Carol, I don't know if you're able to let people in. I'm seeing that some people are.
They're coming
away
in.
And let them in. Beautiful, beautiful. So one of the things that this study shows is that when infants have a properly colonized gut, they're actually going to extract more calories from mother's milk. Certain things that, adults couldn't digest or human systems don't digest, the bugs actually digest. So then when they eat these non-digestible food sources in mother's milk, they're good bugs. So they're going to end up pooping out nutrients that give the baby calories, which is so amazing. So I could show you one of my absolutely beyond amazing 100% breastfed granddaughters. And, interestingly enough, people say, my gosh, Megan must have the most amazing, rich mother's milk because these babies grow and thrive. And, it's pretty amazing how much they get from mother's milk, but some of it's going to be the milk. And thank God I have a beautiful, healthy daughter-in-law, but some of it's the microbiome. So these babies haven't been intoxicated, no toxins in their system, period, end of story. Born at home in a tub of clean water with soft music and essential oils and all the good stuff that we should be brought into the world with that, and it shows. You have a healthy kid with a healthy gut, it's going to be awesome. But the role of the gut bugs is going to be different in the pediatric than in the juvenile, than in the young adult, than even in the senior citizen. And now they know that the wrong balance of bug guts can actually be associated with infertility. It can be associated with obesity. It can be associated with cancer. And as we go towards the back end of the life cycle, it can also be associated with dementia. And so we want to create a really gut with a really good microbiome. The next question I received is, what's the difference between prebiotics and probiotics? So probiotics are actually the living organisms. Those are the bugs in the gut. I got to figure out how my lighting is, if you can see me okay. I'm trying to figure out how that sun works.
Yeah, you're good.
Which way is best?
The sun in front of you.
Like in my eyes?
Yes.
All right, I may duck behind
Much
my basketball
better.
goal. I'm gonna duck behind me.
You're good. You're good right there, actually.
How am I now? Still in
Good.
my eyes.
You're wonderful.
All right, so how about here?
Yep.
Okay,
You're still
beautiful.
golden.
All right, I'm gonna go here because I'm in the shade now. All right, so Jacob, the camera's this way. We're good. All right, so we have a mom nursing a baby, which is beyond beautiful and wonderful, but not for the world to see. So, all right, so I was on prebiotics, probiotics. All right, so probiotics are the actual bugs. Prebiotics are the food that we feed them. I used to tell people everything that we eat essentially functions as a prebiotic. But now we know that's not true, and they've done some phenomenal studies. And so you may have heard me mention briefly the carnivore diet. Brendan Coates is a huge fan of it. Dr. Nandor is a big fan of it, and for good reason. Bugs don't eat meat. And so when people have challenges with the bugs in their gut, and things like, dysbiosis or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, when they eat meat and exclusively meat, even within 24 hours, the bad bugs start to preferentially die off and starve off and go away. So sometimes on just a meat-only diet, that can make an absolutely epic difference fast. And so how wonderful is that? So carnivore diet, a lot of potential there. So the next one, what foods would be considered inflammatory for our gut? And it might be different foods for different people, but here's what I'll tell you. If you have a leaky gut, any food could potentially be pro-inflammatory. So what do I mean by leaky gut? So when I teach leaky gut at seminars, there's a picture that I really enjoy. I show human beings at a resort in a shark tube. So there's this glass tube that humans can walk through. It's like an underwater tunnel, and they're surrounded by great white sharks. Now, if that tube were leaky, in this example, water would leak into the tube, the humans would drown. Well, the opposite happens with leaky gut. Instead of water coming in, the humans would go out, and they could potentially be shark food. But that's more of a myth because we're really not on the shark's menu. But if you have a leaky gut, anything that you consume could be absorbed in a partially or undigested form, and it will create an inflammatory process. So I tell people we have absolutely phenomenal and magic immune systems, and they know what cells are ours and which ones aren't. And if there's anything that's a protein in our body, and I'm going to define protein as anything more than 3 amino acids in sequence, because our gut can absorb single amino acids, that's called an amino acid. 2 bound together, that's called a dipeptide. 3 bound together, that's a tripeptide. If those are absorbed, they're fine, but 4 or more, now we create an immunologic response against it. And leaky gut is the mechanism of inflammatory process, food reaction, a lot of chronic illness. And because we are so terrible with our diet, and I'll tell you, and I'll throw the other factor in there. I'm going to say if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. So processed foods are progressively problematic for the gut. So stay away from that. And then the follow-up question to that was, okay, so what are the nurturing foods? Well, believe it or not, probably the most nurturing food to the gut ever is mother's milk. Not that we want to drink it forever, but the colostrum that's within it is common. And I'm going to share a story as I tell about colostrum, because I was at the conference where the PhD researcher who wrote the book on colostrum, Andrew Keach, presented his data. And he said, there's a very fascinating phenomena. He says, we know that all mammals give live birth to young. Okay, we get that. We know that all mammals nurse their young. We get that. We know that all mammal milk is different. So human milk, different than cow milk, different than goat milk, different than sheep milk, different than killer whale milk. But here was the thing that really turned the world on its edge. All mammal colostrum is identical. So it doesn't matter if you get it from a cow, a goat, a sheep, a killer whale, a camel, whatever, the colostrum is there. And one of its roles is to seal and heal the gut. So that could be potentially a really good food. Aloe vera, which is mucilaginous, can seal and heal the gut. I really like vitamin D. And now that we're talking about proteins, you need to have good digestion. But since proteins don't feed the bad bugs, proteins, especially clean proteins from healthy animal sources or even plant sources, could be quite good for sealing and healing the gut. So I'm going to go back to my questions here, see what my final 3 were, because 9 were submitted. I'm already on number 6. All right, so Terrell, just to keep in mind, they're talking about the gut-brain connection. Then they talk about reishi for the gut. And then what about reishi coffee for people with acid reflux? All right, so let's go the gut-brain connection. So years ago, there was a book entitled The Second Brain, and it was by a medical doctor named Michael Gerber. And at the time, it was profoundly revolutionary because they said, you know what? We have way more brain chemistry in our gut than we have between our ears. And keep in mind, we also have brain chemistry throughout our body. So we used to think, okay, brain chemicals. They're a lot more than just in our brain. They're literally throughout our body. But the gut is the primary source. And so when you have a healthy gut, you're more likely to have a healthy brain. When you have a toxic gut, you're more likely to have a toxic brain. There's a really good functional medicine medical doctor, and she became a good functional medicine medical doctor because she was dying under conventional care. She had horrible not rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, filling the toilet bowl 10 times a day with blood, and she was going to die if they didn't stop it. And, their plan was to remove her colon, and she thought, there's got to be something else I can do. So she went to someone that advised her on nutrition, and lo and behold, the ulcerative colitis resolved. How beautiful is that? But when she would talk about bugs in the gut, she would talk about bad bugs creating bad toxins, and she named 3 of them. Putrescine, not a fun name. Spermine, not a fun name. Cadaverine, these are all made by the bugs. But she said that these are all in the category of something called biogenic amines. And so, well, what would you think is a biogenic amine? Probably means nothing to you unless you study something like a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. That's actually a drug for antidepressants. It actually keeps serotonin and dopamine around longer. So these biogenic amines can competitively bind in the brain for serotonin receptors, dopamine receptors. And you know what? If you got a bad gut, and this will be kind of an interesting play on words, and I'll use certainly the gentle version. If you feel crappy, it might be that you're having crappy chemicals in your brain, and I literally mean that. And so we feel good by putting good stuff in our body, processing it appropriately, getting it to move in the direction that it needs to, and when we talk about diet, the simple phrase, if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. Michael Pollan said, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. My nutrition evolution says this now: eat real food, clean food, not too much, not too often, every color, every day. in a way that honors your physiology, your genetics, and your body goals, mostly plants. And you know what? There's solid evidence for every one of those pieces of data. And so that's the path to really good wellness. So the next question, reishi, also known as Ganoderma lucidum, also known as lingxi, also known as the king of herbs, is really good for the gut. And I'm going to say the top to the bottom and everything in between, but I'm even going to go above the top. So this is the top of the oral, of the alimentary canal, my mouth, and I, believe it or not, I have bugs in my mouth, and hopefully they're not bad bugs, but I've met people that have had bad bugs in their mouth, and sometimes you can smell these people across the room, and poor souls, right? Let's fix that. But what we know is that reishi is really good for the bugs in the mouth. And I tell a story about reishi toothpaste because I had a patient come in, and beautiful young lady, but oh my gosh, whatever was going on in her mouth was serious and unfun and unfriendly, and it was not cool to be in the same room as her. And I also hate to admit to this, but my associate doctor and I would essentially draw straws to see who got to treat her, because it was literally that unpleasant. So the day I got the short straw, she happened to be in my office, and I looked at her and I could tell that her gums were bleeding. And I looked at her and I said, "Oh my gosh, your gums are bleeding. What's going on?" She goes, "Oh my gosh, I just have serious problems with my mouth." And I said, "You know what? I might have a solution for you." And I don't recall if I gifted her. In my mind, I think I did, but I might have sold her a tube of reishi or Ganoderma toothpaste. And I said, "Here's what I want you to do. If you want those gums to heal, brush your teeth 5 or 6 or 7 times a day. And let's see if we can get those to heal." Well, she came in a week later. The gums weren't bleeding. And I'm going to say that there was an 80% reduction in the breath challenge. 2 weeks later, perfectly normal. The next visit after that, she was telling me about her new boyfriend. So how wonderful, and, sometimes we want to not use the most flattering terms when we talk about people that have that challenge. It's a serious health problem that should be taken serious, and how beautiful that it was relatively easy to solve. So it can help with the mouth, but Pavlov proved that digestion started in the brain. And so if we were to talk about the brain, reishi or Ganoderma, great for satiety, great for brain chemistry. Then as we start going down, it's awesome for acid reflux. It nourishes the cells of the gut. It can help the parietal cells. Those are the cells that make hydrochloric acid. Dozens of published medical studies on its benefits for liver and gallbladder. Phenomenal for the pancreas, both the digestive pancreas and what's known as the endocrine pancreas, creating the hormone insulin and glucagon and others. And then we start looking at the small intestine, and it's really good at sealing and healing leaky gut. And then we get down to the colon, and it's good for the bugs in the gut and creates a favorable microbiome. So there are studies showing that Ganoderma is great for the entire alimentary canal, certainly, and beyond that. And now the final question that I got before we got here was about Ganoderma or reishi-infused coffee. And so, is it okay for people with acid reflux? And it's a really good question, because about 80% of people that have acid problems in their gut report that they cannot drink coffee because it's too aggravating. So the coffee that we recommend has a patented process by which it's alkalized. So it's already going to be gentle than more gentle than regular coffee. But then the reishi within it, the Ganoderma, the most alkaline food on the planet, good for gut mucus synthesis, good for, helping the parietal cells, good for helping the gut. And in my experience, even 9 out of 10 people with stomach acid challenges can consume a cup of ours immediately without challenge. And for the 1 in 10 that does have the challenge, if we give them capsules for a week to dose with, in my 10 years, I've only seen one person that after that protocol wasn't perfectly fine with our coffee. So, there might be someone out there that needs more than a week, but those are pretty good protocols. So that wraps up the questions that were sent in. I did put my computer on presentation mode, so I'm going to save my screen, and I will turn that down and close my computer screen and take whatever questions are available.
Well,
And
we've
you know
already got we've
what?
already
Sure.
got one in the chat.
So, Carol, can you see this or no?
Yes, I can.
So this is basically the article that I was showing about the microbiome throughout the life cycle. And you'll see that even in the infant, phenomenal. And literally throughout the entire life cycle. So don't underestimate the importance of our friendly critters in our gut.
Okay.
So I'm going to put this over here so I don't forget it. I'm also going to let a dog in the house. And then I'm going to come back to where we have good reception. All right. Can you hear me?
I certainly can.
Yay. All right. Well, you're at 20. We're at 30. So no, maybe not still. Maybe 28. So it's I might just stay on my deck here in the shade.
Nice.
So, all right.
All right. Your first question is from Nick. How much does gluten play a role in damaging your gut, and what is the primary reason for it existing in our food?
Well, it's a natural protein in grains, and there's a lot of grains that contain gluten, and wheat has been deemed a staple throughout the world. But there's plenty of people, especially people that are fans of paleo, that say, humans didn't evolve eating grains. We probably shouldn't. We think they're responsible for a lot of problems. But gluten's a lot bigger problem than it previously was. And so if we go back and trace blood samples, which they have data for that, they realize that full-blown celiac disease, autoimmune attack on the small intestine triggered by gluten, it's up 400% since the genetic modification of gluten. So remember, if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. And you know what I guess what they did, and I didn't look too much at all of the genetic modification, but they wanted to create a more resilient plant that could survive under harsher conditions. Then they made it so that they could spray these horrible toxins, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, which now they know that some of these toxins are actually autism accelerators. And by the way, I'm feeling the pinch of suppression of information. So I might even mark my words, but man, I'll tell you what, you say one wrong word and you got people beating down your door with bad news for you. So, hey, if you want to consume all the Roundup in the world, go ahead and do it, but pay attention, maybe PubMed, what does Roundup do to kids? And you might find something not so good. What does it do to adults? You might find out something not so good. What does it do to the environment? You might find out something not so good, but you didn't hear that from me. You found that on PubMed.
Perfect. Mary asks, is Ganoderma good for diabetes?
No, it's great for diabetes. And so there we probably have just in and of itself, 50 plus PubMed citations. So my YouTube channel is drbobrakowski.com. No, that's my website. My YouTube channel is Dr. Bob Rakowski. And I think there's a space between Dr. and Bob and Rakowski, and it's DR, not spelled out. But I have a series called Demolishing Diabetes, type 1, type 2, type 3. And I go through complete protocols for all of the above. But let's just say that by multiple mechanisms, Ganoderma is great for type 1, type 2, and type 3 diabetes.
Okay. What products do you recommend for toddlers? How do you recommend infants and toddlers consume the products?
Oh, that's kind of an interesting way of asking it. All toddlers, all infants should have the cleanest and best products that they can possibly get. And certainly if you're talking about the ones that we're partnered with, those are all really, really good. So, we have plenty of parents that'll actually open up a Ganoderma spore capsule and sprinkle it on food. Green tea, red tea, hot cocoa can be amazing. So I did a consult. I posted something on my Facebook page about a boy that had a head injury as a neonate, and he had seizures. And by age 5, his seizures were not controlled by medication. His liver enzymes were elevated, and he was getting into a medical crisis. And so when he was brought to me, they said, you know, hey, can you do anything to help? Now, know my standard answer. I don't know if I can help, but I sure won't do anything to hurt. So I improved his diet as best we could, ketogenic, because that's good for seizure. And I'll get to the products real quick. And I gave a pediatric friendly. So, you know, we had a reishi infused shake that tasted like liquid birthday cake that the kid absolutely loved. Reishi or Ganoderma infused hot chocolate that he absolutely loved. A chewable, like gummy type multivitamin, and some high level, good professional nutrition companies are, yeah, they're getting super high quality, great nutrient bioavailability chewable gummies. Why? Because they figured out if it tastes good, people want it. If it doesn't, people don't. And we even did chewable fish oils. Now, I'll tell you what, those are a little more challenging to make decent in terms of flavor, but they made them not horrible. And this kid did it, and within 6 months, off of all medications and seizure free. And so what do I recommend for toddlers? Always a clean diet, and then the best sources of nutrients that you can get them to consistently take. And we want to be consistent. And what I'll say above and beyond this is it's absolutely the role of the parent, the guardian, whoever, to absolutely protect that child from all manners of toxins. And, you know, if you were to look up certain toxicities associated with certain medications, you know, I have a patient who's a pediatrician who's leaving his group practice because he said, Bob, I can't believe this. These kids have a lot of challenges that we could fix by cleaning up their diet, but our practice group is incentivized to put these kids on drugs. He said, and I can't do it. So I'm leaving and I'm starting my own pediatric clinic. And I said, well, God bless you for that. I'm going to send all my PDs to you because we need more like you, you know? So you'd be surprised if you protect that child, get them clean air, clean water, clean food, don't get any toxins in their body as much as you can possibly protect it. And if you're ever going to consider injecting anything to a child, know everything that's in that injection and every potential thing that could happen, and do your due diligence. You know, we are entrusted with these children. They're, you know, if I can use this phrase, they're gifts from God. And you know what? You treat a gift from God okay, and you're going to be okay. You don't, there's a price to pay. And, you know, I don't mean God's going to strike you down or anything like that, but if you don't honor that gift, there's going to be challenges that you probably don't want.
True. Anne asks, what causes vertigo? How do you treat it, especially in pregnant women?
Well, there's many potential causes, but it's generally accepted to be within the and so there's a YouTube video, and it's entitled The Brain That Changes Itself. And within it, there's a segment on a woman who is wobbler. Now, wobbler is W-O-B-B-L-E-R. And this woman, she would stand. What had happened was she took an antibiotic and it destroyed her inner ear. And there are antibiotics that could do that, but she would stand and she would be wobbling like this. She couldn't stand straight. She'd have to hold on to something. She always felt like she was falling, even when she was lying down. And so a very sophisticated neuroscientist, University of Wisconsin-Madison, named Paul Baccarita, thought, you know what, maybe we can do something called sensory substitution. Maybe we can change other parts of her nervous system to take over where the inner ear failed. And what he did is he put like a little camera on her head, and he had her put the laser beam or the light beam into a little circle target. And when she would concentrate on holding that light beam in the target, suddenly she could stand perfectly still. Well, I don't know how long they did this for the very first time, but let's say they did it for 5 minutes. And when they stopped doing it, they said what they had the first residual. It might have been 10, 15, 20 minutes where she had her own balance without the apparatus and without her inner ear. And so I'm giving you a long answer. So if someone has vertigo, it's resolvable even if you obliterate the inner ear. Could be an inner ear problem, could be an inflammatory process, could be an infection, could be, you know, some type of physiologic damage. But what I tell people is balance is the combination of 3 things. Visual, that's my eyes. Vestibular, that's my inner ear. and proprioceptive, that's my joint position sensors. If you want to do an interesting thing, stand on one leg and close your eyes and see how you do. And I had a very embarrassing experience with that myself. Now, I ruptured my left Achilles tendon, about 12 years ago. And I didn't get it surgically repaired enough, and I've got a deficit. And so, interestingly enough, when I would stand on my left leg and close my eyes, I couldn't even stand for 3 seconds without falling down. So I said, well, that's not cool. So I'm going to train it. So for something like 100 straight days, I worked on my balance with my eyes closed. I did what I call a Tabata, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds rest, 8 rounds, and at least one a day for 100 straight days. And then I got to the point where I can stand on that left leg with my eyes closed nearly as good. So you can retrain proprioceptives even, in response. And I think what I did is, after I had that severe injury, I just never retrained the new proprioceptive system. But now I did, and I'm very happy I did. So, and that's also a plug then for, challenging your body. It was martial arts that required me to stand with extreme balance on my left leg. If I didn't do that, I probably would have spent my whole life not rehabilitating it. Looks like Grace put something in the chat, because I saw it flash on the bottom. Was that a YouTube link to the video, The Brain That Changes Itself? I actually see Grace on my screen. She's one of the few I see with her beautiful red hat and her great energy and her wave.
I'm not sure. I'm not there yet. We've got lots more questions about it.
Yes, actually, I put in Dr. Bob's YouTube channel. He was asking about the diabetes videos. I put in number 1 so far, and then I'm looking for number 2 and number 3.
You're so awesome. Thank you, Grace.
I used to be an administrative assistant.
Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got our next question for you. Is Ganoderma good for eczema?
Well, Claudia, don't shake your head. Yes, the regulators will slap you and fine you and spank you and I don't know what. So the answer is, the medical literature, it is. My answer is going to be real simple. I don't know if it'll help, but it sure won't hurt. But there's backup in the medical literature, and you might actually, ask a few people, hey, I heard you had a skin problem before you started, consuming this. How's it now? And they might say, well, son of a gun, it's gone. I don't know if it had anything to do with that. As far as the regulators are concerned, probably not. But hey, it's gone, and that makes us all happy.
Perfect. Anne says, I have a client who seems susceptible to frequent lung infections. Is this mainly due to dysbiosis?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things that could cause that. So, what's fascinating that you asked that question is, in Chinese medicine, the lung and the large intestine are coupled meridians. And that would certainly create an argument that, if there's something not right with the microbiome, that it could lend to that. There could be airborne allergies, there could be toxicity, the person could have been a previous smoker. The enemies of the immune system are stress and sugar. They could be under stress, there could be too much sugar, there could be a number of things, but there's an absolute link, and it could be part of it. It could be part of it.
Okay, Rhonda asked what brand of gummies you were speaking about for toddlers.
So I think I'm gonna change this way because I realize my lighting's better. I use a professional nutraceutical company called Nordic Naturals. I use a dozen professional companies, but I'm thinking that Nordic Naturals has the best tasting gummies of all the gummies that I've consumed.
Perfect. I'm just going through the questions.
They also have gummy fish oils, which, by the way, are really quite good as well.
Perfect. What would you suggest to put in your shakes? Fruit. So I'm assuming what kind of fruit can you put in there?
So today we asked a question about food combining. And food combining is important. So one of my best mentors of all time, he passed on in his mid-90s after, just a phenomenally productive life of contribution. But he said, you know what? People to look at you 10 years from now and tell if you've been combining your foods properly. So food combining 101, fruit digests really fast and should be eaten all alone. Number 2 category of food is going to be vegetables. Vegetables are very flexible. They're mostly water. You can eat vegetables by themselves. Certainly, you can eat vegetables with starches. You can eat vegetables with fats. You can eat vegetables with proteins. They're the most flexible of the foods. Starches and proteins should not be eaten together because the digestive processes are antagonistic. So if I'm saying fruits should always be eaten alone, are there exceptions to the rule? And the answer is there are. And so the exception would be papaya, which has bromelain and papain. And then also, is it bromelain in papaya and papain? I think it is also. Or is it bromelain in pineapple? But either way, those have digestive enzymes that are actually could be mixed with proteins. So a protein, papaya or pineapple would be properly combined. Other than that, essentially would not be properly combined. But keep in mind, if you have a pretty good digestive tract, you can probably handle it, but you're not likely doing the best thing for you. So interestingly enough, before I knew about food combining, I would like a banana in my shake. And I stopped doing it because it would actually bloat me. You know, I didn't like it. It's like, okay, if I put a banana and I change the flavor, I get gas. I don't want to do that. So I stopped doing it. But then someone said, you know what, I had the same problem. That was on a call I did earlier today. But when you mix it with peanut butter, it's better. So what's going on with that? Well, peanut butter, good source of fat, is going to slow the transit. It's going to keep it in the gut longer. It's going to allow more efficient digestion, slower release, and therefore might be nicer on the gut, but it's still not a great combination. So papaya and pineapple, those are going to be your friends for shakes. If you have a pretty resilient gut, you might be able to tolerate more than that, but it's not ideal.
Perfect. And Devin put bromelain in pineapple in the chat.
Thank you. And papain and papaya. There it is.
What are the effects of eating grains on gut health?
Depends on who you are. That's the real answer. Some people, it's going to rip up their gut and cause serious problems and potential autoimmunity. And other people, it's going to nourish them and make them feel good and full and content and satisfied. I am definitely in the paleo camp. You know, prior to the agricultural revolution, people didn't eat grains. Now we eat so doggone much of them. But if you're going to eat grains, remember this, whole grains are going to be best. So these genetically modified things and heavily processed, those are going to be not so good. So, stick with the whole grains. And if you do well with them, you're probably going to be okay. So years ago, there was a book entitled Eat Right for Your Type. Peter D'Adamo was the author. He said, blood type O, these are meat eaters. They have really good stomach acid. They do really well on an animal-based diet. But we're all omnivores, by the way. I've said that before, right? So I got central incisors, I've got canines, I've got molars to grind. So I've got teeth and a digestive tract that's a hybrid between an herbivore and a carnivore. So I'm an omnivore, and so are you. But blood type O, more meat-based. Blood type A, more plant-based. A, Bs, and Bs in between. So a hybrid type diet. So, maybe the A's and the ABs are going to be the ones that are more grain-friendly, unless, of course, they have celiac, then, certainly stay away from gluten. If you're an O, you're less likely to be grain-friendly, but maybe you have such a resilient digestive system that you tolerate it.
Okay, and so far that's the last question in the chat. Claudio, do you have anything to throw in tonight?
I'm almost afraid to open my mouth.
Yeah, no health claims.
None whatsoever. I know I asked you or made a comment about the toothpaste yesterday. I'm not sure if you'd like to, maybe if you can elaborate it in safest way possible. What I was using it on? No.
Oh, yeah. No. So that was a topical use of Ganoderma for things like insect bites and stings and sores and cuts and bruises. And, so what we know is that if you go to PubMed, Ganoderma accelerates wound healing. And it's also anti-infective. And that's really, really powerful. And it's in there. And so, can we actually say it helps? Well, we really can't say ours helps. We can say there's evidence from the medical literature. Try it. See what it does for you. We have people that really like it. So thank you for that.
Anybody else?
The information here tonight was over the top. Thank you.
Well, yay. Maybe we should have internet challenges more often.
Sure, stress me out. All right.
Yeah. So
All right.
Carol, who always does such a fantastic job, and I love you and I appreciate you. You're so good for all of us in our world. You know, we're setting everything up. And then just like that, my internet is just dropped and I can't get it back. And I couldn't get it on my phone. And I'm like, oh, for crying out loud. Then I shut off the Wi-Fi on my phone. It's like, man, my signal in the house is terrible. You know, then I went outside and well, then we ultimately found the spot and I'm kind of liking it here. I'm in the shade because it's warm. I might go for a swim after this. Actually, I'll probably walk the dog because he needs a little exercise too. So.
Awesome. Well, on that note, everybody, feel free to unmute and say good night.
Good night and God bless.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you,
Good
Dr.
night,
Bob.
all. Thank you all.
Dr. Bob.
Thank you.
God bless. God bless. God bless.
Good
Night.
night.
Thank you.